warning is kind of, yeah. Hello, everyone. Welcome to IFT Research Call. Today, we have Martin. Martin, thank you for doing this. Martin is from Logos Technical Service from Token Economics team. Today, his talk is about the draft of funding when bets can influence outcomes. Yes, Martin, stage is yours.
Thank you. Thanks for coming and having me. So this is basically research that I've been doing on my own for the past 2 quarters. It actually comes from a year ago where I was at ETH Online Hackathon and I was just trying to code up something and it didn't work. And then like 11 p.m. I had this revelation that I can actually do this. So I actually coded the basic variant of what we are going to see. And since then, it's been like in the back of my mind, and recently I decided to pick it up because I think it's an interesting mechanism that might have some potential. So before I get too much into details, let's just discuss what this is about. So this talk is trying to introduce a mechanism that looks at how prediction markets work. And here, we know that prediction markets aggregate beliefs, but the capital that enters them is pure speculative. Whereas in threshold crowdfunding, we have contributions, and typically we have like a predetermined goal that the crowdfunding campaign is about to reach. And very often it happens that there's under provision and coordination failure in these markets that just leave it just short of the goal, just by a tiny fraction of the amount. And there are also like dominant assurance contracts, which is like an adjacent kind of work that's more focused on like a free rider problem. Free riding in provision of public goods and contributions to public goods. So there's some relation to this. So I'll just mention this very briefly. And there you need to actually like pay out of pocket for people, incentivize them to show up, basically. But now the question of this research is, if we have a prediction market that is priced on a funding outcome, the capital inside the prediction market is denominated in the same units as the capital that is used for kind of the fundraise, right? Is there any condition under which we could tap into the speculative capital and make it productive, put it towards the fundraise? So let me just outline how we'll tackle this. So first, I'll just provide some motivation with the motivating example. Then I'll discuss the mechanism and some applications, because we'll have more regimes of that mechanism. And then there are three applications that's also crowdfunding, curator-led action markets, and one of them is missing there, which is the token launchpad. Then there are some extensions worth mentioning, and I'll conclude with a discussion. And please, if there are any comments or questions, just shout at me, because I just literally see just the screen. Yeah. Okay, so let's start with the motivating example. So suppose that there's a park fundraiser, right? Community wants to fundraise for a park renovation or whatever. There's a goal of 10K USD, and it's been some time, and they collected 7K. There's still 1 week to go, and suppose that now we have a betting market whether this will end up successful or not, right? Whether the 7K will hit the 10K by the end of the week. So suppose that we have like 2 bettors on each side of this bet. So there's Betty, which says, yes, this is going to be like for sure funded. I'm betting 2K on that. And there's Nick, who says, no way, I'm putting down 4K. And they are counterparties in these bets, right? So if Betty wins, she gets Nick's payoff, Nick's bet, right? And if Nick wins, he gets the pot, including Betty's yes. So with these bets, you can see that the capital that has accumulated around this campaign already exceeds the goal, which is, we have 13K, whereas we just then, right? So there's like, in the system of this already, there's enough to build the park. It's just allocated to speculation. So now the question is, how and if we can reach that. So the clock's ticking, right? So we are just shortly before the deadline, and there's like 3K that we are still short of. So it looks like Nick's gonna win. But what Betty thinks, so she has an idea, and she thinks, if I donate the missing 3,000 myself, I'll clear the goal. My bet wins, and I collect Nick's reward, right? So if you think about it, she's thinking, okay, I'm gonna spend 3K, I'm getting 4K, so that's 1K profit. So, well, she will actually do it, right? So if you look at the napkin math, so she already has this stake of 2K, then she will potentially, and that's the move here, she'll add the 3K, so total cost is 5K, and success is getting her stake back, right? So that's the bet that comes her way. That's the 2K plus Nick's 4K. So she is actually earning 1K altogether. So she does this, the park gets built, she earns a profit. And actually, like, it is Nick's money that funds the park that he bet against. Oh, sorry, I think this is a bit misleading because it will make sense only later. But it's still Betty's money in this case. So just ignore that. But I think I want to make one more note here, and that is that the first line, bet stake, is actually like a sunk cost at this stage because it's like a sequential thing, right? So she already spent 2K, and she is, so from if she is evaluating the move just from here on, she doesn't really take that as a cost. So potentially she would be willing to donate up to 4K, because 4K is what she is getting from Nick's bet. So even at this stage, we can have net negative, and she would still go with this move because of that sunk cost logic that she will ignore the bet stake. Anyway, now kind of the conceptual move is like, what if there are 50 Bettys, right? Because we had one Betty on one side of the market and Nick on the other part. So who actually is going to do this, right? Because who donates to the top up to do this? And every one of those yes betters would prefer someone else to pay for this. So, and there's no commitment for them to like contribute just a tiny bit to collect this amount, this 3K that they top up the campaign with to win it. And so there's a free rider problem, right? It's a coordination failure if there's 50 guys, and Nick would win in that case. Any questions so far? No? Okay. So now the kind of the idea, what I'm going to talk about is if we had a protocol that actually automates this Betty streak, right? Which actually, coordinates this capital and produces an outcome that is equivalent to what Betty achieved, but it applies to more actors than just one. So informally, you would think that you would take all the capital that's in the system. In this case, this was 13K. And if it's larger than the goal that we are aiming for, 10K in our case, then this will trigger, and we have the gap of 3K, and so we will possibly do drafting. Drafting is what I call taking the money of the speculation capital, putting it towards the campaign. So in this case, we would take Nick's no bet. He bet 4K, so we take 3,000 of that. and we put that towards the campaign, on paper. The goal clears, yes wins, and Betty receives her 2K. Plus, what's the remainder of Nick's bet, which is the remaining 1K. So her profit is actually 1K. And you can see here that if you put that side to side with the original strategy, that we end up with the very same outcome. Because essentially what happens is that we take all the money, we pay for the park, and we give the rest to Betty, right? So there's not much more that you can do in terms of allocations. So in the end, this produces like a settlement that is equivalent to the one where yes bettors coordinate and do what Betty did. You might argue that actually what we are doing here is like a very very like opinionated where you are potentially giving more advantages to the yes side and disadvantaging the no side. That's part of the design, really, and it is in my mind, of course there's like a limit to which you can do this, but in my mind it's also like thinking about the kind of a skeptical capital, which is the no bet, and that skepticism in this protocol that I'll discuss formally more later, you will see that it actually leads to like higher chances of the thing that he is against getting funded, right? So it is kind of paradoxical in that sense, but that's the cost of his skepticism. Whereas, otherwise the cost of his skepticism would be just powered by the probabilities and kind of the EV world. So the revelation here is that some of the bad liquidity is potentially funding, and it's incentive compatible for everyone. Of course, the no guys don't like it, but it is an outcome that if there was coordination allowed, the system, there was like a commitment device for that, the system would actually arrive there. So there are some questions which we didn't address, which perhaps get cleared out later, which is, why does Nick participate in the first place, given that, it's like kind of rigged against him in a way. And what actually happens with donations that perhaps come later after this is all cleared, because this clearing can come potentially before the end of that fundraise. Okay, I heard something. I'm not sure if that's hands raised. So if there's any questions, just go for it.
I think there's no question right now.
Okay, good. Yeah. Okay, so now I'll discuss the mechanism. So I call it D2F1 because it has just one campaign, whereas you can also have more. I'll introduce that as an extension later. So let's just call this basic thing DF1. This is what I actually built for ETH Online. No, ETH Global. Yeah. So let's just put some nice letters in this space instead of the numbers, right? So we define a campaign here, which is this set of goal, the deadline. Then we define a donor benefit. It's like a private benefit. So if I donate $1 USD, I get B out of it. You can think about it. Don't think about it as a different token, for example, but think about it more like it's like private utility. So it's not transferable. I think in the basic case. And there's also beta. Beta for now, just assume it's 1. And this beta you will see is just a parameter for the drafted part. So if we have part of the speculation capital going towards the campaign, we can argue whether they are getting the full benefit, the B, for this, or if they are getting just half of it or 0. So that's just a parameter that governs this part. But in terms of actions, we have 3 actions here, which happen between 0 and t, which are irrevocable, and that is donation. You contribute to the campaign, and you benefit from that via the B, right? If the campaign is successful, which means it clears the goal. Then we have the yes bet, which is a position on campaign clearing the goal by D. We have the no bet, which is complement, so meaning the goal is not hit, and if it is hit and some of your, the no bets lose, right? But still, they have preference in drafting, so part of their contribution part of their bet is potentially drafted, so they might get some benefits of that, which is this beta B here. And then, just notation kind of. We have the dyn, which are like the sums of that, in every time period, and at the terminal stage is just without the subscript. And the benefit B is actually like a continuation incentive, because it also is something that, suppose that it's clear that the campaign is getting enough money, but so the resolution is already clear, right? You know that it's getting enough money, so the yes is going to win, but the donations keep flowing, and they still draw that B out of their donations, and this is big if it's clear before the terminal T period. So there could be like this period where we accept just donations. Does it make sense? Good. I think I need to speed up a bit here, just because I have a lot of slides, as you can see. So this generates, as I just mentioned, like 2 structures, two phases. The first one is where the money in the system, the donations, yes bets, no bets, don't hit the goal together. So we have the bets are open, donations are open, and they can still increase and contribute to getting to the threshold. But once they actually, the capital inside the system exceeds the goal, so we know that it's going to resolve as yes, we are hit the goal, whether we are drafting or we are not drafting. But the donations are still going on, the bets are frozen, and donations can actually go beyond the goal, because we assume there's like enough B that anyone can get. But the drafting amount is not yet finalized. As you will see later, the donations actually crowd out the drafting, right? Which makes sense. Like if you have enough donations, you don't need the drafting. And this is just what I said. After the lock, there's only direct donations which continue. And there's the crowding out. Drafting is determined at D, and then we could have another period where we accept donations which grow the D, so that D is composed of these 2 parts: the original one at the threshold, and the D at the lock, and the D that comes after that. So late donations actually substitute the drafted bet capital, and that means that perhaps the no that was drafted into the funding would go towards as a reward for the counterparty, which is the yes betters. So now we let me just, maybe that was a bit wonky because I didn't introduce the drafting rule. So let me just talk about how drafting actually works. So at settlement, we define whether there's a gap, basically, right? Which is this R, which is either 0 or it's the difference between the goal and the donated amount. And then once we know that this gap is 100, then we can look at how much, and this is the CN, we draft from the no part, the no bets. So this would be either all of them, or if it's bigger than R, then it's just R. And then we could also draft from the yes part, which would be whatever we are missing from the, after we draft the no guys. So in total, we have the success condition, which means that, campaign succeeds if the lock fires, which means that there exists some T under which we have this inequality. The capital in the system, as the donations, yes bets and no bets, exceed the goal that we set up earlier, right? And the drafting is minimal, right? Because we are just taking as much as we need initially from the no bets. There's a priority to the no bets. The crowding out implications of that I've explained, and in the end, the payout is determined, about basically either it's the goal or it's the total that was donated if it exceeds the goal. So that can possibly be adding those donations in the post-lock period. Any questions? Okay. Okay, now let's look at what are the payoffs, basically. Right. So if you are a donor, this is your payoff, and you are getting the benefit on your deposits, whether you deposited before or after the lock. If you are a yes better, and this I should have said this is for the success case, which means that the campaign gets funded. So as a donor, you get the benefit. If you are a yes better, you are winning, right? But what can happen is that part of your rewards, which potentially is the no bets, right? The counterparty, they can be drafted. So we have this y plus n minus r, which is basically the remainder of what happens in terms of the betting liquidity. And it can also happen that actually, right, there's the yes bets that are being drafted, which means that you are winning, but you actually are experiencing a loss, right? Because actually part of your capital was used to trigger this win. And if this is the case, you are getting, again, like the BW, which is some part of the benefit that's associated with that. Well, and if you are the no guy, well, this is not your lucky day, right? So then probably there is either you are getting 0 and all of your bets are going as rewards to yes counterparty, or there was some part of that drafted towards the cause, and then you are getting the BW again on this fraction. So that's pretty much the success leg logic here. And let me now. I don't have the failure one. I have it right here. Okay. I've discussed this case, so let me just skip this because this is, again, the lock kind of logic, the post-lock logic. And discuss the failure case, which means that, the total capital doesn't exceed the goal. Then the donor gets his donation back. There's a full refund. If you bet yes, you lose your stake, of course. If you bet no, now you're winning. So you basically get your stake back, and you get the yes pool, pro rata to your bet. What possibly is interesting is that this failure bonus is something that's going to drive a lot of things later in this talk. So just want to outline this failure bonus for no betters. So I just want to say that it's something that is embedded in the system, but again, it is triggered by the presence of yes bets. Now, as for the properties, we can like claim nice things here, right? There's budget balance in both branches. If there's enough capital, the campaign clears. So like we can like make these claims, but here they are satisfied by design. So I'm not spending much time here. The same on marginal expected returns. So I could explain this, but this just boils out to the logic that I outlined earlier. It's just weighted by probabilities pretty much. So I'll dig into that more in a few slides later. What I want to highlight here is that we end up in a situation where we are like from the start of this campaign towards the time t, you can only get closer to the goal, right? So if you bet yes, things are only getting better for you because more donations means that you are closer to the goal. More yes bets means that there's also like more capital in the system that also gets you closer to the goal. And the same holds actually for no bets, right? So if there's skeptical capital, it actually pushes you towards the goal. So if you are yes better, gradually like your situation can only improve if we like take it, by the face value, not in terms of expectations. And if you are a no better, perhaps at the very start, like it looks like it's getting no traction, but then these deposits and bets start hitting, and things can only get worse for you in that sense. So we do have like a tension that is there, so that if we were to have like a simultaneous game for this, where the yes guys are supposed to do a bet and the no guys are supposed to do a bet at the very same time, there is always one side which doesn't participate pretty much. So what this kind of works with is that it assumes there's like a sequential arrival, also like for the bets, but also for the donations, which creates like kind of ambiguity, right? And maybe some time inconsistency in expectations, and of course, like it's not gonna be an interesting market in all kind of in all kind of settings, but there's going to be like some contentious campaigns perhaps where we would get more controversial kind of both-sided probabilities that actually like create an interesting market. But it, in a sense, it's like a monotonically attractive, right? Because what I just said, it's more attractive for no's if the pool is thin at the very start, and then it deteriorates as the state fills. Whereas for yes, it's getting more certain as it's getting closer to the goal. So assuming that this happens sequentially and they observe the state across the time periods, that kind of gives you an idea that perhaps this is possible. And I would argue that there's also like a dependency chain that is embedded in this system, because we need basically some donations, or I call this mission aligned capital. And this means capital that is like willing to fund the cause. It just doesn't know whether it should what they should do, right? Whether they should do a donation or do a bet or something. So I'll dig into that later. But we need that kind of basic ground there, and that only creates like the market in itself, right? And then the yes bets, they actually need the no bets as rewards. So they have dependency on the no bets, and there's like a cold start problem, because there is also no speculative no without yes. So it's like a vicious circle in a way. And I'll suggest a solution, which will be a tax on D later on, that kind of goes around this, but I don't want to do that right here. So there's a certain conditionality in terms of how this market comes to be, and for that, I want to first look at how donations actually compare to betting no, right? And this is like kind of the mission aligned capital perspective, where I'm coming here to fund this thing, but perhaps I should just bet no, because perhaps that's like it gets drafted if it's needed. It doesn't get drafted. If it's not needed, then I get money back. or I donate it and I get my money back anyway. So let's look at these two, right? So if you donate and it turns out to be a success, you get the benefit B, of course. Your stake is consumed, and net it's B minus 1. Whereas in a failure one, you get it back and it's 0. So it's pretty straightforward. With the no bet, actually, if it's funded, you lose your stake, right? But part of that stake is perhaps drafted, so you might get this B beta expected drafted thing out of it, -1, right? On failure, on the other hand, you get your stake back, of course, and then you also get a share of the yes pool, right? The yes bets. So your expected outcome is just the weighted probabilities across these two states, and it actually, as I'll show here, donations dominate no's if this condition holds. But if you can see that we have the B here, and if you put that B equal to 0, then it is actually the opposite, right? So that no bet actually is more attractive than donation. And so to summarize this, if I'm like a mission aligned capital, and I'm just looking, even taking into account the benefit of this, if the benefit is small or the probabilities of failure are high, or there's a lot of yes capital, then it is optimal for me to actually bet no rather than donate. And this is because really, like, my contribution there can still be drafted, and it will behave as a donation eventually. Does it make sense? Okay, so here I reiterate the very same argument, just summarizing, that high B campaigns actually shift this towards donation. Of course, the probability also plays a role there. Low benefit campaigns and potentially thick yes bets shift this towards no. And if B equals 0, it collapses. The success advantage collapses to 0. And that means that really no dominates every donation. So you can, in that case, you can actually have a mechanism that ignores the donations and drives all the donations to no bets that eventually get drafted. It has some edge issues, but I'll discuss those later. So we have 3 regimes here. The first one being the B0. I've discussed that. So basically, mission aligned capital goes to no, and then is eventually drafted, and has the potential to collect the yes counterparty. So for that reason, there's no bootstrapping issue, right? Because you drive already all that capital that's there to collect, to contribute. You already put it towards no, and that is the seed for yes, right? That's the counterparty to yes. So it creates, puts money on the table for the yes bettors to exploit and take out. And then in regime B, you have some positive B. It's like a mixed scenario. So I'll just leave it like that and discuss the C, which is where we have a very large B, such that the donation clearly dominates no, which is possibly some benefit that's exclusive and can potentially draw a lot of capital towards donations. In that case, they are dominate that, and in this case, we have the bootstrapping issue because we have the donations, but there's no seed capital for the betting, right? So for the first betting capital to arrive, you always need some betting capital on the counterparty part, and that's not there. So the solution potentially here is to introduce a small tax, I call it K, on donations, so that you would get 5% taxed on your donations if there's a failure only. And this would be routed to no betters, so that we get into like this regime B kind of mixed outcome out of this edge case. And if you think about it, it makes sense. Like it is, the tax would be paying no betters to provide capital that can conditionally be included into the funding campaign, right? To top up what the donators didn't provide, and that for that they are basically paying them this tax. So there's some economic reasoning there. Take a sip. Okay, so there's also like the UX question where donation and betting no is very similar. One of them is strictly donating, the other one is conditionally donating. But the no has also the risk that if you decide to bet no, and you think, well, it's going to get drafted, I'm going to get a benefit. Actually, if too many people do this, perhaps just a tiny share of your bet is going to get drafted, and the rest in the success case is going to get be provided to yes betters in the success case as a reward. So in that sense, you lose out on the benefits. In kind of the regime A, the donations being dominated, that's like a UX question where you can still like put the donation bracket on your website, but perhaps all of that will be like double accounted and just routed to no's, because it's more fitting for that regime. Or you open the donations only at lock, right? Because actually in this case the locking is an issue, because it locks exactly at the capital equaling the goal in the system, which means that everyone loses. Like there's no rewards going out, and you potentially want those donations to keep coming in, so that they create overflow in that capital, and that capital seeds the rewards for yes betters. So that's basically the mechanism. I'll now showcase it across 3 applications. Are there any questions for now? I'll try to be quick. I know it's already 42 minutes now. Okay, so now I'll just showcase 3 kind of canonical, in a sense, applications which are different, which differ in terms of what kind of B they are based on, right? So the first one is going to be curator action markets. That has a B of 0 because there's no donor benefit, and we'll also show like a Kickstarter kind of threshold crowdfunding, where you have like a smaller B, which would be some perks or whatever you usually get there. And then we'll also have like a token launchpad example, where the B is actually the token you get like if you contribute, like so it is essentially like the same value, just denominated in a different token. So let me start with the crowdfunding, because that's like the cleanest example of this. So again, we do have a campaign. This time, just notice here we have the beta equals to 1, just as a baseline here, and we also introduced the tax K that I discussed earlier. And what we have is pretty standard. We have speculators, yes, no, and we have the donors that donate the capital to get B. So in this kind of setting, we do have very little incentive for the betting capital to enter, as I said, because it's either no or yes, and there is no counterparty initially. So it's like a vicious circle. And then one more thing to note here is that donations dominate the no betting, because we assume that B is interesting enough, pretty much. And so to get rid of the vicious circle, we introduce the tax K on failure. So on failure, donations are refunded, but K times D is taken out and it flows to no betters, which means that puts some money on the table, and no betters suddenly have some cash flow that's coming out of the state, so that there is possibly motivation to have some no capital enter the system at this stage, which means in turn that yes, betters have a counterparty for a bet on the outcome, and they can also enter the system. So there's some sort of dependency chain, and potentially also some synergy in that. There's some changes to the settlement because now we have the donor tax. So basically, in the failure case, the donor tax goes to no, and it's removed from the donors, right? And yeah, this I have described already. Now what happens if we compare the expected values of the donation and the no betting. Actually, the tax on donations makes no betting vis-a-vis more interesting. So you could have some mission aligned capital self-select into no. So actually the donations might decrease as part of that effect. And if that's actually the case, you might think about the parameter beta, which I talked about earlier shortly, and that one is that one drives how much of that speculative capital is being rewarded if it's drafted. So you could think that perhaps with the K you could also decrease the beta to kind of balance out the system, because K is a parameter for the failure path, whereas beta is the success path parameter. So they don't actually interact in those two in the in the expected value kind of sense. So they are like independent. They can counter each other. So that was the threshold crowdfunding case. What do we get with that? Obviously, is that the speculative market can close the gap if it's needed, and we potentially fund more campaigns via that. At the same time, the speculation is not only on the outcome, but also on how much gets drafted, because drafting is something that is not very appealing for speculative capital unless you are already in that situation where it's going to get loose, unless you need it to win, basically. So now let's talk about creator-led action market. I don't know if this is actually like a term. It's pretty much what I call this. So it's just, it discusses like a specific situation where I have some sort of a local authority that wants a concrete outcome. It could be very small, like clearing an illegal garbage dump or fixing a bench, and this, like a community organization or perhaps like local actor has some legitimacy, but they don't have capital. They don't have perhaps the management kind of capacity to handle it. And there's also like an extender funder, which is like a philanthropist or someone else who has the capital, but doesn't have the means, doesn't have the power of the authority, and perhaps for like reasons like weak legal frameworks, very bad auditing power, political risk, he doesn't want to like give the capital just to this authority and take it from there. He wants more assurances. So now I propose here like an action market which incorporates draft to funding, and you will see that it uses the B equals 0 because there's no private benefit. It's just pretty much like using capital that it's about all the capital is mission aligned capital. It's capital that wants to contribute to this cause, basically. But let's first discuss how can we use prediction markets as action drivers. If the authority has the power to create a prediction market, how can it maximize the actionable potential of that? So, if they do like a prediction market, whether the garbage dump will be triggered by the end of the month, how do you set it up in a way that it incentivizes action, right? Well, they can articulate a question, they can resolve the outcome, and this allows them also to stay clear of the funds if it's handed only by some sort of like either on-chain logic or an independent system. So what I caught in the news last week was that there was a hairdryer that rigged Polymarket bets on the weather at Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris. Sorry, I think I totally read that wrong. Basically, there was a guy who came with a hairdryer to the airport in Paris, where there was like a weather station, and he heated the weather station and bet on Polymarket that there's going to be a higher temperature in Paris, and it caught this got caught in the Oracle, and actually he won, and he did it like 3 times, and on the third try I think he was caught. Anyway, so you see people do it. People do act on prediction markets. It's just usually not very productive. It's not usually like private benefit driven. But that was the market for weather. What if the market was actionable in a way that it was a bet that someone brings a hairdryer and heats the sensor right there, right? In that sense, the market would, if we define this as the action, then the market would be successful, right? Because that's exactly what he did. So in the same manner, I'm trying to pursue this line where we are asking how to define a prediction market that incentivizes the outcome. So if we have feasibly achievable outcomes, just the existence of the market motivates the action, right? You can buy a yes in the market and perform the action, and you collect all the no's if there's obviously there needs to be a disbalance, because if the yes is very likely, then that also like influences the payoff. But in any case, all things considered, you would probably make profit here. One thing to note here is that why is there like zero benefit? Because it's just a binary kind of outcome, and if I do it, I draw the benefit directly of the market. And whoever comes and contributes to this market is basically thinking, well, I want this delivered, and it's more like there's like an aggregate benefit, like a fixed thing that I'm getting out of the delivery of this outcome, and it doesn't really translate to like pro rata B. So in this sense, the donations, if we return to our framework, they collapse into the no outcomes and no bets, as we discussed with this regime A. So we have just the yes and the no side, and the donations can actually flow into the no part, because that's ultimately what the guy who is coming with the hairdryer, that's what he's getting paid from. And then we could ask, isn't that enough? Like, what can we add with breadth to funding to that? Because essentially this is not breadth to funding yet. And when we can actually do one thing, we can add. Yes. Do you want to say something? Okay, I'll go on. If we add direct to funding, we can have authority as a fallback executor, so that we actually can draft the capital from this market if it reaches a certain predefined goal. The goal could be set by the authority, and it could just say, hey, like there is actually, there's a guy I can pay to bring a hairdryer to this station, and it's going to cost me like 40 euro. So as soon, which is a silly example, but as soon as this capital that sits in the bets reaches 40 euro, this would stall the market and draw the 40 euro out of it, put it towards the authority, and the authority goes and just pays the guy to do it. So that this creates a cap on speculation, so that the speculation cannot outgrow like cannot outgrow the price of that action that's underlying. So it creates like a procurement path of last resort. So it adds more resolution kind of possibilities, because perhaps there's no one to show up there who wants to exploit this. Yeah, so this is just a technical thing. I will skip this. You can also have if you think about it, you can have two modes, where in one mode you leave the market open, you have the speculation enter, and then whoever wants to execute, he needs to go and buy the yes side of the market to benefit. That's an unknown executor. But also you can have like a designed designated doership, where perhaps I know that there's like a specialist guy who wants to do this, and I want to motivate him, like do an incentive for him, so I can create the yes part of the market for him and just send it to his address if I know it, right? Or it can be a bribe, like if it's the municipal kind of clerk that I need to motivate, I can position him in the yes part of the market without him actually taking any action if I know his address. And then he will potentially earn the money if he delivers something. But also it creates a funding strategy for no betters, because if you are no better, there are two outcomes pretty much, right? So on success, the outcome is realized, you are happy, the capital is deployed, potentially at some like reasonable cost. Either it was triggered by the guy who did it, or it was drafted and paid for, like the procurement of last resort. On failure, you get your capital back, and potentially you get share of the yes bets. So some sort of capital that sits on the other side of the bench. And this really creates like an inverted nothing ever happens strategy that you maybe know from Polymarket. Or if you are a funder, you want to fund a lot of things, you can just place your capital in those prediction markets, action markets, as no, and if nothing happens. You may earn some money from that. It's like a good saving strategy. But if something happens, you actually end up paying for impact. So it funnels the capital towards the changes that are defined in those markets. But it's a very distinctive case. So which is kind of tailored to this setting, where capital doesn't touch the authority, actions are endogenous, so it's very hard to map out if someone shows up or not. But speculation is kept by action, which is something I quite like as a property. And then you can have multiple markets and more elaborate combinations, perhaps. There are some open questions on governance, legitimacy, and resolution, of course. Oh yeah, and there's the third example, which is the token launchpad. Before I dive into that, any questions? Okay, so the token launchpad is, if you think about it like a bonding curve launchpad, like pump.fun, for example, where you are buying the token on a bonding curve, and then at some stage there's a defined threshold for graduation, where the liquidity is taken out and put into Uniswap, and then you start trading on Uniswap actually. So you can think that the donation, we can map this to this system where the goal is the threshold for graduation, the donation is the purchase along the bonding curve, and the benefit is actually the token allocations you get for the purchase here. And you can bet on whether a token will reach this graduation threshold or not. And this is regime C, which was essentially just using a B being of a high value, because it is essentially just swapped token for token in terms of value. You just perhaps have some sort of and that's something I don't dive into here. You could have, because you are moving along a curve, you can have slightly different pricing for that. But let's just abstract from that now. But what actually happens here is that you are on a bonding curve, and you contribute capital, which is like perhaps like a pledge that you buy this token, and the betting part is on top. But you can still get the drafted capital into this, and then you move along the bonding curve towards graduation if you are able to hit that goal with the capital that's in it. If we look at the cash flows, it is very similar to what we had, but now the B is more like tangible, actually a token, right? So it can actually change hands potentially. And this is specifically for drafted no tokens. It's interesting because you could think what we had previously was that drafted no's actually resulted in benefits for no holders. But in this case, you could actually think that the benefit actually can be also distributed to yes bettors who are winning in that case, and or they can be kept with the no holders, of course. But it doesn't make sense because they would like just retain the value that they bet with. So in that sense, I think it should go to the yes. It can also be burned, for example. It can be sold. Very rich space, I think. And post lock, you can have further donations along the curve. And so with this, I just wanted to illustrate the properties that this has, because the graduation is a good example of a threshold that exists in the space. And there's some unknowns in terms of the curve. There's also some the benefit is that you get a better measure of probability in terms of the fraction of yes over no, because here you are not losing value if there's drafting. Like the value just stays there and it's not distorted by that this probability. Yeah, and there's open questions around that too. Right? Yeah. Let me just quickly discuss a few extensions. I know I'm taking a lot of time, but let me just finish briefly with this. So obviously, like what I discussed was the one campaign example. We can have multi-threshold markets. We can have continuous funding, and we could also have coupled settlements. So I'll just very briefly talk about each. So we had one goal, but actually we could have multiple goals for one campaign, and you could have bets on clearing those goals, which possibly could be interesting for like token sales or some other fundraisers. And then we need to clear each goal individually, and there is some sort of logic where you need to walk from the lowest goal to the highest one and always check whether there's enough capital. And if there's not enough capital, perhaps if you just go with the higher goal, there's like a coalition capital which sums all the capital below, and perhaps you are able to jump. There's an algorithm. It's an algorithm question, basically. I do have like an extension that I can share, which details that if anyone's interested. And then also like the question is, right, how do you redistribute across these goals? Because if there's too many, like that fractions the liquidity, and perhaps like not all of those goals have the counterparty. So there's no bets on one and yes bet on another one. How can you redistribute that? Which is another dimension that's worth very rich and worth exploring. There's some principles that needs to be followed in terms of consistency. So if you are interested, these are written here. But still can be interesting. Another extension is continuous funding, which flips the mechanism. It actually removes the deadline. So if you think that there's like a rolling reserve, so if you think about like an application or a DeFi protocol, and they have some treasury and they have some burn rate and some income, so we could think about like an insurance logic where we would track this R, and we could bet whether it hits zero or not. So you would have the yes bets that actually say that it's positive. Maybe it's not the right way to name this, but it says that it survives. And the no bets, which basically like bet on the fact that it does reach 0, right? And then you would need like a continuous tax that on no's that goes towards yes, so that they have some sort of payoff. So there's like a rolling payoff towards yes, and then there's like a one-off payoff to no's if this event happens. And of course, like the direct funding would be used in a fact that if there's like a deficiency going below 0, we could use the speculative capital to fill that, and with that, survive, have the protocol survive. And the last, and I think quite important extension is a coupled settlement, where we have multiple projects and we have a campaign for each of them, but their goals of those M campaigns are conditional on other goals, right? So they are basically competing in a way. So you can think about this as betting on getting into like a top 3 projects, for example, raising top 3 money, or going over a predetermined share, so like being above 40% in terms of the total, going above, for example, like 10% of the total budget. So you can have like at most, right, like 10 protocols or 10 projects going there, or you can just the runner-up index is a case where because this is also like an efficiency question here, because then you could have protocols outbetting each other, and it raises the bar when it comes to the speculative capital drafting, so that there's inefficiently drafted capital. For example, when it comes to the rank, they could draft capital to be first, but perhaps they don't need to be just first. They could save some of the capital because it doesn't make a difference if they're first or if they're second. So for that case, it probably makes sense to use this indexed level, which is defined by the runner-up, which is the one that the first person that doesn't qualify. But in this sense, the bet on a project is something that also has implications for the goals of other projects. So it's a very complex system, but I think it's interesting. And when it comes to settlement, it's like a fixed point problem where you need to find drafting amounts that satisfy some sort of stability. Okay, so let me conclude with the discussion finally. So the conceptual shift that I try to introduce here is that if you have a prediction market that's pricing a funding outcome, and there's the same denomination of the outcome as the capital that is entering as a speculative capital, then in draft funding markets, this is considered like an exploitable thing, and we are able to draft part of that speculative capital to contribute to the underlying cause under certain conditions, and it creates a system where the event becomes a coordination device, but it's also like a speculative thing where these two actually blur together. The benefit parameter drives the differences between these applications, and each of them has slightly different properties and different potential in this direction. What we are really doing well here is that I think it's the first mechanism that really turns speculative capital to a productive one, and we are able to close those gaps for funding that wouldn't close otherwise. It aligns the yes surplus with overshooting the money in the system. So there is like a speculative incentive that is driven by those donations and potentially makes sense. And it's balancing the budget, it's self-financing. So those are all good properties. Of course, it has the limitations. So this is the thin yes bootstrap. The feedback loop that goes through yes. Like you have a very small yes, then it's not as interesting for the no part, and that's again like not creating a good feedback loop. So that's one thing that it doesn't translate to, and the other one is the cold start issue, where you either need like a mission aligned capital that goes towards no, or you need the tax that would potentially ignite the chain. And there's the crowding out, which is something that I personally don't like as much, because then once you log the system and it's getting funded, then you are waiting for those late donations that determine the rewards for yes contributors, and it's basically it one-to-one matches. Every donation turns into like a reward for a yes better, which I don't like. I would like to have at least some time in between, or more disconnection between those two, because I think it's too obvious and not very good for UX to show that. Well, and all this, is assumed to work only on the sequential arrival, because, as I said, there's this temporal tension if we have a simultaneous one. Of course, there, in an anonymous kind of commit reveal variance that completely changes the dynamics, potentially you get more overshooting and inaccuracy, but you don't get the reactive part of this algorithm. So with that, I just want to highlight some open directions. I didn't do an equilibrium analysis, which is something that probably would be interesting if we figure out that this is something that's widely interesting for more people. That's what I'm trying to figure out now. And I think the multi-threshold equilibrium is really interesting too. The same holds for the couple sentiment with more projects, which again opens like a whole dimension of things that can be studied. So with this, I want to thank you and open the floor for any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Martin. Glad to see that we have good analysis in mathematics for draft funding markets. Also, thank you for showing some open directions here. So yeah, is there any question to Martin? Sorry. Yes, Corey.
Yeah, so I started working on a multi-sided market for content creation, in which the curators fund the content creators, and in so doing, potentially have the ability to earn on subsequent curations, right? And so it's kind of like this marketplace in which people bet on the quality of content, which then surfaces the content, and then subsequent bets allow them to either recoup or earn on the donation they're giving to the content creators in the first place. And it kind of overlaps, I think, a little bit with this in some way, which I think is kind of interesting, because I've always just looked at it from the context of, like, say you had a subreddit. How do you find a non-algorithmic way or a human-fed way of surfacing quality content while also rewarding the people who are putting in quality content? And this is kind of one of those similar vein in which you're like, how do you get communities to allocate funds through gamifying whether or not they think it should be funded towards community projects? And I think there's some interesting overlap there. I'd be interested to kind of explore that.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's indeed interesting direction. I've been myself looking into how this could map to voting systems, for example. And this was more kind of in the realm of like upvotes, downvotes, right? In the terms of that, I am a participant in some sort of a decision scheme, and everyone's getting 2 upvotes, 2 downvotes every round. And then you can decide whether you bet with these 2, and you enforce. It also solves the part where no's are not there. So because now you have all the actors predetermined, or all the capital in a way. So you can upvote, downvote, or you can just give up on this and just donate it directly to one of the projects, and that would be like the donation in this sense too, which is more like a more express preference, right? Because then the question is like, and I have played with this setting, and basically what I said I have done some simulations, and in the first round, I had people, I had like agents allocate. They can either donate this upvote, downvote. It has the same value when they donate it, or they can bet on the outcome of the first round. And it turns out that you are able to, and there was drafting in that, right? But so in the first round they did these bets, and in the second round there were no bets, and they had to donate whatever they had. And I was able to show in that sense that there was redistribution from like the uninformed or like not skilled to the skilled ones, right? Which were able to navigate the betting in the first part, and then they got more power in the second leg. The issue was that if they were good, they were good at navigating the market, but maybe that was just a failure of my model. And they failed at navigating where things get drafted. So they were taxed by the drafts, and they on aggregate like lost influence. But I think that was still like a failure of the model because I didn't make them smart enough. But,
I mean, I would imagine in reality the optimal strategy would be a combination of like, if you wanted something to go through, it would be a combination of donating and betting yes.
Yes. So there's I think there's like two dimensions to that. One of them is you want to express your preferences, and with that you if you know that it skews like other values, right? It's more like the coordination. So if I know there are others who are waiting for a signal that someone else is supporting.
Yeah, you want to place the right signal at the right time in order to incentivize others to then move in the momentum you want it to go.
Yes, and at the same time, you don't want to waste this power if no one else is there. So perhaps you want to split that, right? You want to use part as like a conditional pledge, which is kind of the bet in a sense, and part of that as like a deterministic one, which sends the signal.
Well, that's why I liked my market, because it gave people an incentive to be early, and that by being early, you were included into the revenue sharing of subsequent bets. And so it gave a prioritization on surfacing things early and submitting preference.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Yeah, we can jam on that. I think it's interesting direction for this, but also in terms of like
more complex for sure. There's a paper that I have in the in that server I introduced you to that you should be able to access. And
okay, I'll check it.
It's the curation research channel. You should be able to see it.
Okay, I'm not sure I see it, but I'll check.
Okay, I'll invite you if you can.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Great job. That was interesting.
I have one, Martin. How realistic this sequential arrival assumption? The participants need to observe the state. So, but in reality, there might be some batch participation or something. Do we have some on-chain delayed mechanisms that we can hold this assumption?
So I think it doesn't mean delayed. It means just that it runs for a week. It runs for a day, and then you can observe how things come through, right? So that's the whole assumption. It's not that we. It's not that it's not real time. It's just that the goal finishes tomorrow, and we are able to contribute right here. I can contribute now. You see my contribution, my donation. So you decide to bet, in an hour, and then someone else observes that. So that it just really drives that kind of reactionary nature of this, such that before you make a decision on this, you observe the current state. That's all there is, right? Because if you have like simultaneous system where everything comes at once, you typically don't observe the counterparty or the whole state. You just assume something, which it's not something that is not possible to derive via game theory, but it makes it more complex, and it's more like a theoretical equilibrium potentially that maybe is not attainable in practice 100%. I'm not sure that it answered your question.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. It's not about the some delay all actions and reactions need to be visible. Any questions? You might be. I have another one. You might explain that, but not. I'm not 100% sure. Is there? Do we need to consider the collusion? So, because it looks like you assume that everyone is individual. So, for example, if some Bettys and Nicks can have some secret agreement to make some profit together by algorithmic actions, is it possible to do that, or?
So what you can potentially do is to like hedge, I think, right? So you could hedge, as I was saying, that something gets funded, and perhaps in the multiple projects scenario, you can hedge so that you bet in one project because you don't have so much conviction. As I was just talking to Corey, this kind of strategy can play out there because you can hedge there via these bets, but you can also donate directly to reveal your preference. So in that sense, you can do more complex stuff. You could also, I think the collusion would be maybe more in terms of like timing, so that you would create you would collude with someone or like use a lot of capital to create a state that seems improbable from the previous one, so that let's say I put $1,000 there right away after it starts. So then you kind of manipulate the beliefs of others because they think perhaps this thing is on a different trajectory than what you would assume if this was like a natural flow of things. That's kind of like in expectation terms. Where manipulation is possible, of course, is like in the local kind of action market. There's an authority that drives the prediction market and the resolution, and they can collude in a way that they say it has been successful, but it has not been, for example, and they can extract the money that way. So there's more risk in that setting for sure.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? It looks like no, we have no further questions. So yeah, we can wrap up. Thank you, Martin, for comprehensive analysis. And also you can check the Logos research forum, forum.research.logos.co, if you want to participate in discussions with ideas, questions, or any kind of. So we're gonna have some post about the talk. Thank you again, Marvin. And also one announcement, next week we are gonna have a research call on the Oracle track, which means off-chain data feeders, so finding some discussions from Logos ecosystem, in particular the for Logos execution zone, from Frank and me. So yeah, see you next week. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.